Hello and welcome to another exciting episode, in fact episode 16 of the Lawful Remedy. I'm Richard Vobes and I am one of the hosts of the show tonight. The other host is the lovely Karen Dodd. Hello Karen. And how are you today, Karen? Well, unfortunately Karen is actually running a little bit late. It's raining here in the UK, which means that all the cars slow down and nobody can get anywhere. So don't let that worry you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm talking to the wrong camera. That's the camera I should be talking to. Haven't done this for a long while. So we have, of course, a star-studded cast of clever clogs who are here to answer all your questions. Now, remember, this is not legal advice, but lawful advice. We're going to help you answer any disputes or any sort of problems that may come up, as long as they're something easy and simple. We can answer in a simple and, in other words, not too complex and complicated that takes us down too many deep rabbit holes that we can't do in a show like this. But you know the setup because you've been coming along and you've been sharing this with elsewhere. And I'd just like to say to the gentleman, whoever it is, who's been downloading this and putting this show on your channel, probably earning a fortune from it, seeing as I've since been demonetized, well done, mate. At least the message is getting out, which is the most important thing. So here we go. Who have we got lined up? Now, normally I would ask Karen, who have we got lined up today? And she would say, on our super panel tonight, Richard, we have the one and only, not that button, that one, there we go, Stan McDonald. Hello, Stan.
Hello, Richard. It's good to be here.
It's good to have you here, all the way from Canada.
Temporarily, yes.
Temporarily. And I remember that you did a rather stunning interview with me in which you proved that Canada, the legal entity, did not exist.
That's correct.
And so thank you very much for that. Who else have we got? We have Peace Officer Davey who joins us. Hello, Peace Officer Davey.
Hello, Richard. How are you, my friend?
I'm very well. Thank you very much for coming along. We did an interview and you pointed out to me that it was over a year ago.
Yes,
that,
amazing. Time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it? Yeah, I think it was called "Don't Engage with the System,"
and that's a brilliant
but it was
title.
about a year ago.
Yeah. So do check it out if you haven't seen it so far. And how have you been in all that year? Busy, I imagine.
Oh, extremely busy, my friend. Extremely busy. It's a 24/7 job for me. So 7 days a week. As I'm sure it is for the other guys too.
Yeah.
So.
And these sort of shows, although they're good, they suddenly elicit a lot more requests from people, don't they?
They do indeed. In fact, after I was last on your show, I had thousands of emails over the course of just a few weeks,
Yes.
many thousands. So yeah, I was quite swamped.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's all about getting the information out there. It's all about sort of getting the protections for people out there and understanding that knowledge is power.
Yes.
The more knowledge you have, the more empowered you are.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Well, it's great to have. It certainly is, and it's great to have you on the show. We also have tonight, very popular by special demand, he's back. It's David Edelman, the People's Lawyer. Hello, David.
Oh, bless you, Richard. By popular demand, I think that was my mother.
Yes, that's it. She wrote in.
She likes to see me working 8 days. Sorry, Davey, but I'm doing 8 days a week. You're slacking, mate. So yeah, it's great to be back. These are fun, and the live road shows are even more fun because we get to meet people and have a real eyeball to eyeball session with them. So yeah, but this is great fun. I hope people appreciate it. And I just thought I'd mention something. It's kind of a plug, but before I forget, is I've started doing individual consultations. I didn't want to do them because I was hoping that my materials would do the job. And they do the job, but some people still need babysitting and some people's issues are more advanced. So they need a more advanced sort of customized, bespoke session. So if people out there want to get in touch with me, they're very welcome to, via the website, of course. Anyway, thank you.
No problem at all. It's good to see. I haven't seen you for ages, apart from over the weekend when we were at the Shine seminars, or at least that was your doppelganger. We also have tonight, ladies and gentlemen, the wonderful Sook, if he's still there. Hello, Sook. He may have disappeared. That was why I was a bit dubious. Are you still there, Sook?
Probably with Karen.
No, I'm here.
Karen is now here, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, Karen.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fine. I'm really sorry for being late.
That's all right. I gave the excuse that you told me.
Which was what?
Um,
Oh, yes. What's the excuse?
I'm just trying to think now what it. It was raining.
It was
Everyone's
raining.
on the roads and all of that.
I normally say tractors, but
Oh yeah, was there tractors on the line?
No.
Too many tractors on the line. Let me just
Yeah, no, I'm sorry for being late. It's because I've moved house, so and I thought it was nearer, but it's that time of day, isn't it? Rain, tractors, leaves.
Do you have to come through Arundel?
No.
Littlehampton.
Yeah, Rustington, Darrington.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Blooming nightmare. Anyway. It's good to see you, Karen. Thank
Yes,
you so
good
much.
to be. Thank you. Thank you.
I remember now. Sook is here, but he's just nipped off to get some food. He said
that's
he'll be
good.
back at 8. When he's...
Oh my goodness me, so gone to get some. Well, thank you for David for coming, lastminute.com. So it has changed a little bit tonight because we were going to have Bannerman, but Bannerman's a bit poorly because he's been coming down south doing what Bannerman does, and I
Yes.
think it's taken its toll. So he was coming down under the weather.
Is he
as
is
we
he
all know.
a hardy northerner?
Uar. No, that not Uar, is it?
Well, that's like West Country.
I know, I'm not quite. I haven't grounded yet, Richard. So I'm all
Right.
over the place.
Yeah.
But he will be on. He will be on, but not. Let's give him some time to recover.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So,
no
and do you know
problem.
who else we've got? So you've got David, you've got Davey, who's
Yes.
a new boy.
We've seen him.
Oh,
I think,
right.
Yeah, sorry about that. And
Stan.
And I think Sook is here. Hello, Sook.
Hello, sir. How are you?
We're good, thank you. Thank you very much for joining. Did you manage to get some food?
Yeah, no, I did manage to get some food. I managed to get some for the battery for the phone as well. So we're all thank you.
Oh,
Battery. I wasn't going to get his dinner.
No.
Yeah, the both ran out of fuel. Yeah, so.
Well, we're slowly building up an audience, which is very good because sometimes I think people forget that we're on, and I don't usually put an advance notice out,
No.
which maybe I ought to.
Well, it's been a little bit sporadic though, hasn't it?
It
Because
has.
your internet, you were a naughty boy for a while,
I
and
was, yeah.
and we were going to have a pause for a bit through summer anyway, weren't we? If this is summer, it's gone to
Yeah.
November, hasn't it?
It has gone to
Yeah.
November.
Yeah.
It goes from sort of mid-July to November in
Yeah,
seconds
like
these
that.
days.
I wonder how that happens.
Don't know. Maybe something up in the sky.
Maybe.
Anyway, we've got a couple of conversations lined up to have a chat with the clever clogs, and then we're going to get on to the questions as people arrive. So now, Stan, he's in Canada, as you know.
Yeah.
Stan, you have been on my show with me, and you run your own channel, of course, and you've been having a number of questions put to you. What's the special subject that you want to talk about tonight?
Well, there's many people that have written an email into me, and they ask me, well, how do I access the Cesta KV Trust? And a lot of people are asking the same questions over and over again. And there's the misunderstanding that the Cesta KV Trust in 1666 is some sort of a magic account which we can access. And the Cesta KV Trust, I've actually done 2 presentations on it on my YouTube channel, where I explained it briefly, and then people questioned it because they didn't believe it. So then I turned on and I pulled up the actual statute, and I went right through the whole thing. And what the Cesta KV Trust is for is when there was a fire in 1666, they had a fire, and some of them were off doing things, operating for the Queen, and doing acts of war and whatever. And when the fire happened, all property pretty much was destroyed. And so a lot of people came back, and where's my home? It doesn't exist anymore. So they had to be able to claim their home back or their territory. And if they didn't do it within the 7-year time frame, then it was deemed abandoned, and they could reassign the property. Because you may have been at that point renting property, for example, and you're off at war, so they can't, under the war provisions, they can't necessarily just get rid of the property because technically you still had a contract. But after 7 years, then you can't, if you didn't claim it after 7 years, then the renter or the government or whoever, the mortgage holder, leaseholder, whatever, could turn around and re-put the property on the market. That's what the purpose of that Cesta KV Trust is. Now, what a lot of people do is they say, yeah, but you can settle your bills with it. And the truth is, no, you can't. To settle your bills, if you want to try that route, is actually done under the Bills of Exchange Act. Because as we all know, and we've discussed many times, the Bills of Exchange Act is put into place because it's for transactioning like bills, notes, securities, and stuff like that. And because we don't have any actual resource-backed money anymore, we've been bankrupt since 1933, or different areas or different years. And so what they do is they have a Bills of Exchange Act, and you can take a bill and you could convert it into a promissory note. That's done through the Bills of Exchange Act. Now there's an International Bills of Exchange Act, which is good everywhere, but there's also the Bills of Exchange Act for England, and a different one for Australia, and a different one for Canada, and so on and so forth. Now, you did a presentation before, and you talked about it where you took a bill, I think it was a water bill or a tax bill or something, and you settled it by, converting it. And there's a special process for it. And that would be a separate presentation all unto itself. But I wanted to clear up the misconception that the Cessna KV Trust is in some way an account which you can tell the government to settle bills with. That's totally incorrect. If we read the Cessna KV Trust, it deals with land, not anything else.
Okay. Well, thanks for that. Does anybody want to add, any of our clever clogs want to add anything to that?
Well, I would concur with that. I've been teaching people a lot about using and issuing promissory notes and their coverage under Part 4 of the Bills of Exchange Act. And also, obviously, using the case law of Building and Platt Limited versus Salim Najjar 1969, which Lord Denning ruled that a promissory note, a bill of exchange or promissory note, is to be treated as cash. And also, he actually said, we have repeatedly said in this court that a bill of exchange or promissory note is to be treated as cash. It is to be honoured unless there is some good reason to the contrary. The fact that he said repeatedly suggests that this has been covered a lot in the courts in the past. However, finding that information in the public domain can be quite difficult because it's not information they want you to know, that you can issue a security certificate, a negotiable instrument, and settle any existing liability. I get asked a lot, can I go and buy my shopping with a promissory note? Well, I say to people, yes and no. Yes, technically, if the vendor is willing to accept it. No, realistically, because no vendor is going to want to accept it. It's as simple as that. But Stan is absolutely right. The Seta KV Trust, 1666, Seta KV Act 1666, under King Charles II. That what they actually did was to declare everybody after 7 years to be beyond the seas. Okay, so that means essentially assumed dead under maritime law. And so, because we didn't do that by the time we reached 7 years old, at the time in 1666 when it was created, it was actually, you have 7 years from this date. The thing is, though, obviously they wrote it in French, so the average layperson didn't understand. They couldn't even read English. And those that could, certainly, probably most of them couldn't read French. So, they tricked the people, gave them 7 years. And back then, of course, as well, we only had town criers to spread the news and word of mouth. We didn't have the internet and newspapers and such like. So, nobody obviously knew about it. But of course, when the next generation come along, that 7 years starts from the moment they were lost at sea, which is, of course, after they're born. So once they confirm the live birth, take a footprint and handprint, etc., then they go, oops, we've lost it. It's lost at sea. So we set up a trust in their name, which is your birth certificate trust, and then obviously you're indoctrinated throughout your schooling to believe that you are the trust. That's why they had morning and afternoon registration, to indoctrinate you, to get you to answer to the name of the trust. Now, the thing is, as Stan said, you can't just, as far as people, saying about accessing it, I think they're thinking of it like a bank account or like a pool of money where they can go, oh, that pool of money, that is my money that you're managing. Can you pay this with? Can you settle that with? But that's not how it works, as Stan rightly said. That's not how it works. You do access your ZKV trust when you're on state benefits, for example. The money they're giving you is not a charity donation. It's actually what you're entitled to. And of course, you're entitled to one share of the United Kingdom. And there being approximately 70 million people in the country, that one share totals, I think it's around about £40,000 a year. I've worked it out once, that you're entitled to, all right, as a share of the gross domestic product, the GDP. So they obviously don't want to give you that. They are the managers of your birth trust, of your straw man. They don't want to give you that, and they certainly don't want to be paying out, bills on your behalf. Now, of course, because they are the managers of the trust, they require you to declare yourself as the trustee, so as the person, and therefore you're liable for settling liabilities. But you're not the only trustee. The Crown is also a trustee. Yeah. And so therefore they manage your birth certificate trust. You are a spirit as far as they're concerned. You're a dead entity. You're not a living being. And which is why they can summon you to court, because you can only summon spirits. You can't summon sovereign beings. So because of that, if you say to them, I am a living man, I am a living woman, whatever, of course, you're communicating with the dead. And if you're communicating with the dead, a dead entity, a title, a job title, for example, whether that's a police officer or a magistrate or a judge or, even a carpenter or whatever, you're communicating with the dead. So you're no different to Bruce Willis in the film The Sixth Sense, as in you don't realize you're dead, but you've declared yourself as dead. Because you've spoken to it and communicated with a dead entity, and there's been communication back and forth. So
it's quite a deep subject, isn't it?
It is, but that's how they perpetuate the fraud, you see,
right?
Because and how they get to treat you the way they treat you. So because they're obviously the managers of the trust, that means they're also the trustees of the trust. They're also the beneficiaries of the trust, which is why they can take taxes from the trust, from the person, from the straw man. So, a lot of people, what they're doing is they're trying to separate themselves from that birth trust, from that straw man. However, what I teach people is actually the opposite. And I know this gets me a lot of hate from some groups and whatever, because it's, they assume, well, Peace Officers UK, United Kingdom is the company name of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So, we've just essentially we've ditched our straw men, right? We're separating ourselves from our straw men. We're standing as living beings. However, my opinion on that is you haven't ditched your straw man. You may believe you've ditched your straw man, but you haven't, and nor should you. Okay, because you live in your straw man's house. Your straw man bought that house, and that's the name on the land registry, is the name of the straw man. Your bank account is a straw man, your straw man's account. Your mobile phone, I'm on my phone now, that's my straw man's mobile phone. I had an Amazon delivery today. That was my straw man's Amazon delivery. So far from ditching it, because I've become accustomed to living the way I live throughout, in the 56 years I've been alive, I don't want to ditch my straw man. What I want is to bring down the system. So what I do is say, right, okay, so I know all of the remedies are there in their corrupt jurisdiction, in their admiralty law. So I will use those remedies against them, and I will protect my straw man from any and every claim. And I would do anything I'm entitled to do, such as being a trustee of that birth trust. I am entitled to issue a security certificate in the form of a negotiable instrument or a promissory note. I am entitled to do that, and the law allows me to do that. So, of course, you will have all these corporations that reply back to you and say, no, we don't accept promissory notes. Well, of course, they're lying, because the agreement you signed in the first place is a promissory note, whether that's a loan agreement or a mortgage agreement. So they're lying to you straight from the off.
I'm going to just interrupt there, because we're just going quite deep into that, and we just really wanted to sort of talk about the Sestakove, if I pronounce that correctly, just to highlight Stan's point. And we have got questions coming in, and obviously some of the questions that come in may well reflect some of what you've said there, Peace Officer David. So thank you so much for that. I know that David Edelman was interested in mentioning, I think he said, the Treason Act. David?
Terrorism Act 2000.
Beg your pardon. Yes, Terrorism Act. There we go.
Well, in these turbulent times, we need to get a coherent, centered view of what's actually going on. The Terrorism Act 2000 defines terrorism. It says it means the use or threat of action where the use or threat is designed to intimidate the public or a section of the public. Now, as I'm reading out these paragraphs, I want people to think about what happened 4 years ago and what is happening now. So you've got a so-called pandemic, and you've got so-called interracial riots, and it's all theater. So I want people to think about the effect, the purpose of this theater, and the effect that it has on the public and its relevance to the Terrorism Act. So this is section 1. I'll repeat. Terrorism means the use or threat of action where the use or threat is designed to intimidate the public or a section of the public. So I'll stop there. The way that the government handled the alleged pandemic was not designed to make people feel relaxed and less anxious and safe. It was fear porn, and it was designed to intimidate them, nudging, behavioral insights, etc., intimidate people into compliance, keeping a distance, staying at home, wearing masks, and taking jabs. Moving on. And the use or threat is made for the purpose of advancing a political or ideological cause. Well, the current government appears to have a totalitarian agenda. It's no more totalitarian than the last government, because, as George Galloway quite rightly said, it's just two cheeks of the same arse. And the idea is to create an environment in which people need the government to reassure them, when in fact, behind the scenes, it's actually the government that's creating the problem. So it's the Hegelian dialectic. Moving on. The action must be one of 5 types, including, so I'm just going to mention one that creates a serious risk to the health or safety of the public, well, mental health for one thing, and physical health. If you felt coerced or blackmailed or pressured into taking a medical intervention, including a mask, a medical procedure that was not proven to be safe or guaranteed to be of any benefit. So serious risk to the health or safety of the public or a section of the public. So what we have is a situation in which the government is engaging in what we call lawfare, creating legislation, statutes, regulations, codes that intimidate the population, but in fact, the government are in breach of their own legislation, just as they created regulations to not have parties and stay at home. And then they were the first to have parties in Parliament and breach their own rules. So what we're pointing out here is that we have one law for them and one rule for us, or one rule for them, one rule for us. And people in their masses are beginning to question what's going on, but it's like pulling teeth. There's a lot of cognitive dissonance, a lot of Stockholm syndrome, and a lot of false belief in the narrative and false faith in government. And this is, I'm just pointing it out so that it makes it easier for people to see the hypocrisy and to see the damage and the illegality. Well, we know the government is unlawful because they're not even a lawful government. Whatever they do, it's unlawful. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to point that out, but you have to scratch below the surface to see that they're even breaking their own laws and rules. And that's something that we need to stress more and more.
Thank you very much for yielding, and what a lovely yield it is, all polished and shiny. Do you think that the government, if they're behind some of this, and I'm not saying they are, I'm just suggesting a fantasy scenario here for, just for the purposes of witticisms. If a government was behind the disturbance of people by getting two types of people to clash against each other, would we be getting, do you suppose, into the realms of problem, reaction, solution? The solution being that if you need to control people, you might want to use technology such as facial recognition, digital ID, CBDCs, all the stuff that we've been seeing recently being put up, so that, like they have in China, so that they can say, look, golly, people are on the street and they're mucking about and all of this is going on. Maybe we should bring in these security measures to actually better for the better health and benefit and safety, always the safety of the people.
Yes, they only have one playbook, which is problem, reaction, solution. They don't have imagination. They've been doing it for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And interestingly, we've actually got proof of what's going on. We know what's going on, but sometimes it's difficult to actually prove it. And there is a meme going around with someone has filmed an agent provocateur, so a plainclothes agent who's in the crowd and clearly makes a signal kind of something like this, or something to that effect, to a police officer who nods and looks at the guy, and they're looking at each other and nods. And so that's the signal for the agent to start stirring up trouble. And it's already documented that the police are, only today I was listening to a senior police officer admitting on mainstream media that for some time now they've had a softly approach to immigrant or recent immigrant or neo-immigrant issues on the streets, where they don't put on riot gear, they just have a basic uniform. And then a few days later, they go to a football match, and it's full-on military warfare against so-called football hooligans. So yes, Richard, it is all theatre. It's all being carefully orchestrated behind the scenes, and the press are involved, of course, as we know, and they've been celebrating the fact that the so-called far right, which was threatening to turn out in droves, and which never did, was seen by a mass turnout of the far left, or the left. And again, so the press is saying, well, yes, we've seen them off. Our sheer numbers have seen off the far right. It's all utter nonsense. It's just a cognitive warfare, and more of us are seeing through it. And when enough of us have seen right through it, that's the end of the government as we know it.
Brilliant stuff. Well, thank you very much for that. And if anyone wants to comment on any of those subjects as we go through the show, you are, of course, very welcome. But I think we should get on with some of the questions that the audience have put. So, Karen.
Yeah, here we have. So we have Droney Macaroni says, is it possible to declare yourself... Sorry, I have to use my phone because I haven't got your internet connection at the moment and my machine's a bit compromised. Is it possible to declare yourself now alive and claim recompensation? Talking about what we were talking about before, the legal fiction, the straw man.
There is a way to do that, yes.
There is, a case to stand.
You can actually get a document. You have to get your doctor to sign it. And basically, it's evidence of life. And sometimes the doctor
evidence
look at
of
you.
life.
Yeah, because if they
Wow.
if they pronounce you dead, legitimately, and you come back alive, there's a certificate made out, and it's evidence of life. And when you file that, or the other alternative is to file an affidavit of status in a court of law, and you file these documents when you go to court, then you're no longer the dead person.
Do you know, it's great because reading further down the line here, Stan, we've got the beer guy saying the same thing. He's answering Droney Macaroni saying, yeah, evidence of life and the ecclesiastical deed poll.
Yeah,
you know about that? Yeah.
Can I respond to that?
Yes, of course.
Right. So my belief is, no, you can't. Okay. Yes, of course you can prove there was life, but it's written on a piece of paper. It's a document, and all documents are dead. Okay, all documents don't exist in life, so they've already classed you as ceased. Okay, which is why when you actually die, they class you as deceased, and the prefix de is an old English prefix meaning from. So you are dead from ceased. Okay, so you must have been ceased in the first place. As I said earlier, if you speak to a dead entity, which all of these, corporations, people, whatever are, they're dead entities, right? Then you're communicating with the dead. So it doesn't matter the words you're using, whether you write them down, whether you speak them verbally. Okay, the only way to get out of this system, unfortunately, is revolution and bringing down that system. Okay, we live in a pyramid, as we know. Yeah, and at the top of that pyramid is a capstone with the all-seeing eye of Horus, right? So rather than trying to jump up there and grab that capstone and bring it down, what we ought to be doing is realizing that we all form the foundation of the entire pyramid. Okay, the entire pyramid rests upon our shoulders. So what we need to do is use their remedies and laws against them. Okay, protect your straw man is what I'm saying, right? Rather than trying to say, it's another example, right? The Matrix, the film The Matrix, right? So taking the red pill, it's become, it's come to mean just waking up to the lies of the establishment. So you take the red pill, right? And then what happens? You're alive and you're on the outskirts of society. You're not even in that sort of jurisdiction. The only way you can communicate with them in that jurisdiction is to upload yourself to that jurisdiction, to the Matrix. Yeah. Then they can see you, hear you, read you, whatever. Okay. So they trap us in the Matrix. Rather than trying to escape the Matrix and get everybody else to escape the Matrix, what we need to do is bring down the Matrix, because the Matrix, society as a whole, is built on rules. Okay, just like all computer code, it's built on a set of rules, and those rules apply to everybody. Okay, they're manipulated and used and loopholed by the very, very wealthy, and of course, we're not taught those remedies. So there are tricks and tips you can use to negotiate that and therefore starve them of their lifeblood. Their Henry Hoover at the top that sucks up all the money supply, which is their lifeblood. Money is the lifeblood of their power. So if we can starve them of their money, that's how I believe we bring down their system. We educate other people to use these loopholes what I find is a lot of people are saying, "Oh, well, I'm a living being, and under this old ancient rule and law and etc. etc." Well, laws are, as I say, they're all dead entities. They're all within that jurisdiction. Yeah, it's like the common one about, oh, can you um, operate a conveyance in the private and not be a driver of a vehicle? Well, no, because you're deemed to be operating in commerce, and living beings do not operate in commerce. Living beings under natural law were designed to share, to commune, to share, and to help benefit the entire community.
So,
Um,
you don't think that there's a chance that if more people do the opposite of what you're saying and actually sort of step out and say, "Look, I'm living," and maybe set up alternative communities, so that actually you seep out the blood, literally the blood of working men and women. From there, people resigning from corporations so that no one's actually working for them, so no living man or woman is employed by a corporation. You don't think that is an alternative way, because then you're only left with bits of paper and nobody actually there to enforce any of the rubbish that these bits of paper supposedly set up?
No, so I mean, that's not what I'm saying, because I believe we should have our communities out, try and build our communities outside the system. Just
Yeah.
like, as I say, the film The Matrix, they were building a community outside, they called it Zion, but they built this community. However, they needed, in order to fight the system, they had to upload to the system. Okay. They had to upload into the system and fight the system. And that's where your straw man comes in. So, of course, we can build communities. Of course, we can commune. I've been like, heavily involved with Hope Sussex,
Right.
you know, since not long after their inception. And that's an amazing community, but unfortunately, they still have to upload to the matrix. When they go back to their homes um, at the end of the day, or if they need to go to, bookers, to the cash and carry to buy stuff, they have to act in commerce. And if you act in commerce, then you are a dead entity, which is how they trap you when you are operating or when you're driving your vehicle. They say you're acting in commerce. And you say, well, no, I'm not. I'm just leisurely going out for the day. Yes, but you had to fill up that vehicle, didn't you? And therefore, a transaction took place. The vehicle is owned by your straw man. Your straw man bought it with your straw man's bank account. You know, so they catch you out in this way and trick you into it. So what you need to do is learn the methods around that, rather than focus on, oh, let's get because realistically, you're not going to get 70 million people out of the system, okay, just by telling them that, you're a living being, and because there's a lot of people out there that, they're comfortable with their lifestyle. Yeah, that's how they've always grown up. They don't want massive change. That is too fearful for them. They need to have massive change. We all do. Yeah, we need the system to crumble and be brought down. But the only way you bring down the matrix is by uploading to the matrix and manipulating it and teaching other people how to manipulate it. Then eventually that system will crash. And then you can replace it with different laws and different people who are given a different message and saying, we now repeal the 1666 SETA KV Act. Yeah. And, you are now all seen to be living beings.
Right.
I'm not saying that's impossible. That's very, very possible, after a revolution. But I think in this country, we are so far off a revolution. Yeah, we haven't been made anywhere near uncomfortable enough to revolt on such a mass scale that you could call it a revolution. We will have skirmishes. Of course, they've got, the establishment have got armies in the form of police, in the form of the military, that they will use to suppress
Yes.
any You know,
So on the one,
right.
sorry to interrupt there, but on the one hand, you're saying we need a revolution, but on the other hand, we're so far away from it. Obviously, it's never going to happen because the mainstream media is hogging the people's attention. A lot of alternative media is also driving the attention where the mainstream media wants it. Let's face it, loads of YouTube channels are showing you images of these different racial clashes, which in its own way is causing more upset and division by actually showing all this stuff going on. And sometimes it seems to me you're better off not knowing anything's going on because then you're not full of hatred yourself. But it's like catch-22. Where do you go? But let's yes, absolutely. Shall we? Sook. We haven't heard from Sook. Yes.
Yeah, also. I suppose when we're talking about this, it's easy for us sometimes to get lost down some of the detail in that. Before there was a 1666 or any other legislation, human beings have been on this planet, they've been moving around, they've been operating. What it boils down to ultimately, if we have a look at what people are talking about when we talk about is the living man and woman piece versus the legal fiction, is that as a living man and woman, we have inalienable rights. There are rights which we've spoken about before, which we're deemed to have as a virtue of the fact that our blood flows and our flesh lives.
Right.
Those inalienable rights are the rights that, whether you go into the Torah, the Quran, the Gospels, the Vedic scriptures, the British Constitution, those are the rights that all of those books or those texts or those ideologies are acknowledging and then describing and defining and then explaining different ways of protecting them and fighting for them. At the same time, over periods of history, there are those who've tried to control humanity and groups of the population. And they have always tried to do so by injecting fear and then giving you privileges. So you'll get human rights, right? Your human rights are granted by a government or the EU or by somebody, and therefore they can be taken away by those individuals or those authorities.
Yes.
Your inalienable rights can't be changed. Now, how you choose to fight for those, there isn't a single way of doing it. There can't be, because this is a timeless battle that has existed as long as one person has tried to control another person and that person has tried to be free. The one that's tried to be free has tried to express their inalienable rights, and the one that has tried to control them has tried to do so through their own rules and legislation, whether that's private legislation that I oppress over my wife or children or village, or whether that's legislation I put through apparatus to subjugate a nation. It's still the same battle, just at different scales. So Davey's right. In the current situation, you have a situation where people have assets, they have homes, they have estates, they're comfortable in certain lifestyles, and they are trying to preserve aspects of that while they're having this battle. And Davey and the other guys that are using the legal system is a completely valid way of doing it. However, you can't on one hand say that we need a revolution and on the other hand be trying to hold the very strings to the pieces that prevent the revolution from happening. What do I mean by that is you can't have the revolution and be frightened of losing the material things that the legal fiction world gives you.
Right.
Okay. Now, I'm not saying everyone has to throw all of their material world out. What I'm saying to you is, based on what you're asking for, you have to be prepared to make the sacrifice.
Yes.
Okay, when we look at alchemy, when we look at alchemical rules, when we have a look at this being a spiritual war, the reason that Knights Templars lived such a chaste life, where they sacrificed and they lived lives which were very simple, was because part of that is, from an alchemical perspective, it gives them greater spiritual power because they're not taking from the universe. Therefore, they're giving more, therefore they have more power. Okay, that's just a basic energy exchange thing. So people that are fighting through the Constitution are fighting the correct fight. People that are fighting through natural law and the Gospels and the Quran and the Torah, they're fighting the correct fight. People that are fighting through the legal system are fighting the correct fight. If they are fighting for their freedom and their inalienable rights, then all of those methods are valid methods, depending on what your individual situation is. And it's as simple as that. You know, people that want to go down the legal route, I get it, but you are also at the same time appeasing the beast.
Yes.
Yeah, you are appeasing that beast. So, I understand that, but if you want to accelerate it and you want to move fast forward and you want to get that revolution, then people have to be prepared to make those sacrifices for the future generations. Otherwise, those things won't happen. Unfortunately, there are people out there who are doing it, and therefore this will get pushed to where it needs to go. It's already there, to be honest. And the proof of that is just quickly going back to David Edelman. Let's not forget that these riots started with a young man who allegedly murdered 3 young girls. And that young man had been working as an actor for the BBC. Okay? So when we're looking at optics, when we're looking at things like the George Floyd event that occurred, when we look at things like the Sarah Everard event that occurred, we need to look at these with analytical eyes and have a look. I've posted a couple of videos and photographs. One of the videos is the event that that David Edelman talked about earlier, Richard, where he says that you can see the plainclothes instigator make the signal, and you can see the police officer. We saw this loads during lockdown. There was a guy called Johnny Overkill that a lot of the paid-for agitators really hated him because he called them all out because they were watching what was going on from the periphery of the rallies, and they'd pick them all out and they'd see them at each rally. Right, so we know this happens, and I've sent you that video. We also know there's actors all over the place in this. I've also sent you a video where they're actually filming riots outside a mosque. Someone's waiting, then they're telling the crowd to run at them, and then they're showing you that. And then in another clip, you can see it on the mainstream media how that clip is presented from another angle. From one angle, they look like they're having fun. From the other angle, they're like quite a mob. So there is theatre going on out there. And people need to watch that theatre and have a look at the optics in the same way that the hospitals were empty during COVID. The far right riots have been empty. And so there's something for people to have a look at. The YouTube channels are covering that. The BBC won't cover that. CNN and the others won't cover that for you. There haven't been any far right riots, hardly at all. You need to go and have a look on YouTube and have a look at the people that actually turned up.
Do you think that they're doing this as well, creating these riots, is this theatre to bring in martial law? Has that got any bearing in this?
Absolutely. To bring in the legislation. Now, all of a sudden, they're saying that they're going to arrest people who are putting right-wing content online. And this has been the trigger for that. Off the back of what?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they're saying that, they're going to shut down Telegram and X, and they're getting upset with Elon Musk and everybody else. But in reality, the only thing for them to be upset with is themselves because they have lost control of it, of their own illusion.
And it was also interesting. I'm sure you've all seen the footage of the people that were being kettled. They wanted to go home. They were there representing either the far right, the far left, and they were there standing peacefully. And they wanted to go home, but the coppers, or whatever you want to call them, were moving forward and forward and forward. It was getting dark. And then randomly, they were just taking people randomly who were just standing there and arresting them. And then they said it's because the biometrics from the helicopter above had used facial recognition and they had been witnessed to throw a bottle or something like that. So that's potentially scary. We don't know if that's true or not. And I don't think it is true because one guy was filming this and you saw him through the duration and he hadn't thrown anything. And then bing, they arrested him, hands behind his back and everything. So, they're causing a lot of disturbance, to say the least. Powers Definitely. That shouldn't be.
Definitely.
Can I come in? Can I come in?
Yes, please do.
Going back to the idea of the legal fiction, the straw man, and picking up Davy's point about bringing the system down. Well, we need, in my opinion, an analogy. Imagine that you're on a ship going down. So the ship's going down, the ship represents the system, but the system has to provide remedy. Now, a ship that's going down provides lifeboats. Now, if you have your wits about you, you take your straw man onto the lifeboat and find dry land. You'll end up in dry dock, and now your straw man and you are safe. You now own it, or you've taken it out of the control of the system. Meanwhile, the system has sunk, it's gone down, and you're now on dry land, and the equivalent in real life is you've moved from a fictitious place which doesn't really exist. It's a fictional fantasy world called the United Kingdom, just as Canada is. And you're now on England, land and soil, where you have lawful standing as opposed to legal status. Now, I want to be a bit more specific, and I want to go through very briefly. This won't take more than half a minute. The exit route is via, so the system has to provide remedy, and it provides it because we've done the research via the British Nationality Act 1981, the Internationally Protected Persons Act 1978, the State Immunities Act 1978, the Confirmation of the Charters 1297, Bill of Rights 1689, Satika V Act 1666. And when you add those, and those, there is particular sections of that. When you add all that up, it's an escape route. It's your lifeboat to land on dry soil, into dry dock, land and soil, and the assembly that's doing this in England, we brought this in from America, is called the English Counties Assembly. Now, I know that there are other assemblies. We're not the only assembly in town, but we have evidence to suggest that our paperwork is very powerful. We've already got reports coming in that people traveling on our paperwork are given VIP treatment when they travel. So they're on a diplomatic or a special protected persons list. So what it means is that you are expatriating your straw man back into England. So you become an English man or woman rather than a UK citizen or subject. And one of the reasons why they're demonizing being English is because, this is just my feeling, is because England is where remedy is. It's not in the United Kingdom. It's not in Great Britain. It's on England. And that's what we have to do first before we can actually establish the living man, the living soul, the living woman as a being that has to have their divine birthright, their unalienable rights respected. And it appears that at least the airports are doing just that.
Can I just quickly ask, with your analogy there of the sinking Titanic or whatever it was, as it's going down, you said you take the straw man with you. What possible advantage would it be to bring in the legal fiction back onto dry land where you're effectively starting as men and women? Would it not be better just to have said goodbye to that whole thing so that each man and woman goes, hey, me Tarzan, you Jane, however they would go?
Jane.
It just takes it out of range of the so-called system. That's all it does. It's not a...
But would you be burning it then? Would you get there and go, that's it, goodbye. Goodbye,
again.
all caps.
Fresh start.
Legal entity. Goodbye, vessel. Goodbye, legal fiction. Goodbye, dead entity. Goodbye, straw man. Oh, you could set fire to it, I suppose.
Well,
Not in
the
the
thing
water.
is about the legal fiction that it's also the name of the beneficiary. And you may want to interact with the system at certain key moments and step into the role of beneficiary. This is the doctrine of the three estates, which I'm not going to go into now. But there's an amazing operative in Australia who's nameless, because I think he's a bit concerned about being targeted, who runs us through how to be, in their system, the beneficiary properly in such a way. It won't work with the average enforcement agent or the average copper. You have to be in front of a judge that knows what they're doing. But it's basically designed to be, if you are ever trapped in the system, it's designed to put the administrator, aka district judge, in their place and limit their power, where you step into the sovereign beneficiary role and give them sovereign instructions, which is, I wish, my will, my wish, my pleasure. So you don't answer questions. You don't say you want something. You don't say you would like something. You don't say please. You give firm instructions. And this is how the elite and the royalty are trained from birth. They are trained. So it's not just a theoretical thing. You actually need training in how to be sovereign.
Wow.
To that end, David, I got a comment for you. There was a case in Canada, and it's sealed, of course, you can't get access to it. What the person did in court And as you guys were stating earlier, you are technically a beneficiary and the government makes you out to be a trustee. However, they're also the trustee. So what this person did is it said, okay, because this was a court case, they said, you've got the all caps name on the document. Therefore, that's the creation of the government. The Vital Statistics Act, or whatever you guys call it where you are, proves this. My birth certificate is evidence of this. So you have to bring both parties into court under a rule of joinder, because you're technically taking the capitalized name into court, but you're making me out to be the trustee and the beneficiary, and I'm not the trustee. You are, because that's the capitalized name. I'm only the beneficiary to the name. And as soon as they did that, the court case was over with. Because they can't go after their own. They would have to attack the crown. Because your name, the capitalized name, is the creation of the crown. And they can't attack themselves, because that would then go against the Treason Act. And that ties in with what David said earlier. And
there's a guy. Yeah, sorry, Stan, but there's another trick that somebody pulled, which is they said when they were asked for their name, they simply wrote it out and put a copyright symbol next to it and handed it to the judge and said, "That's my name. Could you read it out, please, Judge?" And the judge went silent and, in fact, withdrew from the court, because there's a confusion of names. Because when you say the name, you don't know whether you're saying an all caps name or the actual name.
Right.
And so there's the two worlds. The two worlds, one world which operates on presumption. That presumption can be rebutted with a little bit of initiative. And these tricks are just coming to light now. But the problem is, first of all, none of us knew these tricks. And secondly, none of us were brave enough, or have been so far brave enough, to apply them. But that's going to change. That's going to change. We're going to go into court and we're going to apply these tricks, and we're going to, this is one way that Davey might acknowledge, this is one way of challenging the system. It's basically, it would have to run out screaming in surrender, because we're onto them. We know what the tricks are now.
Brilliant.
Right.
Okay.
I totally agree.
When I was in court one time, I actually spelled out the name. And I said, they said, can you state your name? I said, I can spell it for you. And then I asked the judge, because I told him uppercase, lowercase, all the way through. I said, do you have a claim against that name? And they said no. So they admitted it. But one of the tricks they do is they ask you your birth date. Well, you don't have first-hand knowledge of the event. So as soon as you do that and you give them that, then you've technically lied to the court.
So what do you say when they say, what is your birth date? What's the answer to that?
I have no first-hand knowledge of the event, Your Honor, and hearsay evidence is inadmissible in court.
Perfect. Wow. And it's entrapment. They are entrapping us into committing impersonation, a personage. We're basically impersonating something that isn't us. And that's a form of fraud. And we get punished for these crimes, and the crime is not what they say it is. It's the crime of impersonation.
Right.
Do you know, I think it'd be really important, because you clever clogs know what's going on. You're very good at articulating. You know the words, you know the numbers, the dates, and everything. But people like me, I'd be clueless. I'd like to fight my cause, and I think it would be great if we had, like we've got the rapid response team. If we had a group of people that would escort us to court, because many of us want to fight our corner and fight our case, but we're crap at standing up there and saying it. We've got the guts. Wouldn't it be good if we had a team? Well,
it would be nice, but you have to face it yourself, don't you? Because you can only have a Mackenzie friend in a civil court.
You could, but just somebody even, just telling you what to say. I mean, I'd happily go to court, and I don't want to go to court. I know David Edelman always says don't go to court, but if that situation comes, it would just be nice to have somebody telling you this is what you need to say, because you've got it like that. You just know. I forget. I know it's somewhere, but I'll think, I don't know.
Karen, I've got good news. I've got good news for you.
Go on, David.
And you're quite right. I did always tell people not to go to court, and the simple, honest truth is because I didn't know what I needed to know. And in the last year or so, I've found out a lot more. So I was playing safe myself, because I didn't want to lead people into a very stressful situation where there was no guarantee of victory. But the information coming out now does suggest that we can pretty much guarantee victory. Now, here's one for you, Karen. You can take someone like myself or Davy or Stan or Suk into court, if you know how to be the beneficiary and the special administrator of your estate, we're back to the doctrine of the three estates, then you can lay your hand on the man or woman that you wish to represent you and declare, make your sovereign declaration, I wish this man or woman to represent me and to represent my estate. And they then can do, and that bypasses that bypasses all the Mackenzie rules, all the Solicitors Legal Services Act rules. It's a sovereign declaration, and they have to obey it. We're talking about obeying us, not just keeping us happy, but obeying our express commands.
Absolutely, but there's only a few of you guys, isn't there? I know you're training everybody, but I think it would be amazing if we could train a bunch of people that can put their hand on our shoulders and represent us. That's what we need, I think, because there's not enough of you to go round.
Yeah, but Karen, it's better off if we all know what's going on. Not only the person that knows what's going on, but the person they're representing. Now, one of the tricks that they'll pull, because I can shut David's thing down, but I'm going to give you the loophole. When council tax brings you into council tax, it's a BS court, we don't care about that. They say that you can't have anybody represent you, right? You have you have to do it yourself. And then you turn and you say, well, who's representing the council? Who's representing Worthington Council? Well, so-and-so legal advisor or lawyer. Well, if they can have a third-party representative, why can't I?
Yeah.
Right? You've already set the precedent, so leave me the hell alone.
And if we haven't got to that level yet where there's enough people to hold our hand in court, it would just be nice to have a sheet of things to say, so we're not thrown off.
You can't. Because Karen, I'm going to ask you a question.
Oh God.
Okay, what's the answer? You don't know until I ask the question, and you'll be scrambling around on your sheet looking for the paper. Oh, where's the answer? Where's my phone? I can call Stan. You have to know your subject.
You have to learn it. You have to learn it. So we've got to go on these courses.
Yep.
Karen, you can't speak the truth. You have to embody it, and then when you embody it, it comes out from the heart, and that's how you trump their nonsense. You don't go in nervously with a representative. That would be appropriate in extreme cases or emergency cases. But if it's not an emergency, then it's you learn to embody truth and take it, if necessary, into court.
I think that's very wise words, but I mean, I'm sure Richard gets, I'm sure all of you get tons of emails. I get some, and I'm not a clever clogs, but they're asking me, solutions to their personal situations, and I don't have the answers, but I totally understand it. I can't tell them what to do. They've got to do it themselves, but I think it would just be nice if there was a way to get that support, to encourage it, because we are all, this is the rebellion, isn't it? The rebellion isn't us all on the street fighting. It is fighting the system peacefully and with knowledge. And there are so many people that want to do that, but they're a little bit, they just don't know how to. But that's why we're doing these shows, to educate.
It's early days at the moment, right? With this whole battle, and common law versus admiralty law, all of that sort of stuff. It's early days at the moment. That I think in time we will have all the information out there. Do you know what I mean? It's most people have woken up over the past 4 years, and a lot of them are so confused that learning this information. You can go to a talk. I do talks all over the country. You can go to a talk, but absorbing that information all at once within a couple of hours of chatter and remembering all that is quite difficult. So what we need, I think, is more instructional videos out there by, the likes of myself, Suk, David, Stan, etc., Richard,
well, I wouldn't listen to any of mine.
I would listen to yours. I think that.
Well, actually, yours is kind of doing that already anyway. Your channel kind of does that anyway, because it is a library of information. So I think in time we will have these libraries of information available to get the. It's going to take time to get all this knowledge into all of these people.
Sure.
Okay.
And also, sorry, Davey, interrupting, but I'm just thinking, in the early days, because this is, this has been going on for a very, 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 very long time. So it's going to take a while to bring down. But when Guardians were set up, Suk was there, I think, for the first time I attended. They were doing role play, which was really, really good, really beneficial, especially if you've got the good actors. That puts you in that situation and knows what questions to ask, because then it throws you, doesn't it? And then you have to be there in your sovereignty answering those questions. So I think videos are brilliant, but I think also if we do have some in your courses, bring people on board and do some role play as well.
Yeah, well, I'm actually planning on doing some role play videos as it happens.
There you go. See, synchronicity.
Yeah,
synchronicity.
Exactly.
Okay,
Question?
time is ticking on. I'm just going to move it forward. I had a question about court, but I'm going to ditch that for a moment because I'd like to just. We've spent the first hour talking about all these things, and the show is really primarily for the audience to ask questions. And I know that sort of sprang from one, but you can see how these questions can go down not rabbit holes themselves, but into
long answers.
Yeah, very long
deep
answers, and people have different opinions on it, but generally they're all of the same, in that we want a different and more fair system, I suppose. So Julia, who is on the chat and in the chat Julia is not a avatar of Julia, her legal persona, I suppose, is typing. And she has sent me by WhatsApp a couple of questions that I think would be good to get in. So this is totally different, and we throw this out to the clever clogs. So what do we got here? Suzanne Taylor says, question, if my pension income is under the tax threshold, but rental income puts me over, can I deregister from HMRC by informing them I am working in the private? Is anybody like to... answer that one?
Yes.
There's an alternative.
Oh, hang on. Go with David, and then we'll go to Stan.
Okay.
David.
Well, you just declaring your sovereign wish, will, pleasure, is always the bottom line, really, and because they operate on presumption and silent or tacit acquiescence. If you don't say anything, they just continue to send you tax returns and you just continue to fill them in. But just remember that nobody was ever prosecuted that hadn't signed a document. You can fill in 1 million documents, but if you don't sign one of them, you're not in contract. And a contract forms the basis of a claim. No signature means no contract. No contract means no claim. And that is just a universal principle. I yield.
Stan.
Yeah, another alternative for the rental property, I wouldn't give up your benefit because you may need it in case your rental property goes down the drain for some reason. What if you just turn around and said, okay, I'm going to take that rental property and transfer it into a trust. And then the trust accumulates the funds, and it's not going directly to you, it's going to the trust. So you've created a separate entity to hold your assets.
Right, there you go. That nice, easy answer. Thank you very much.
That way you're not fighting with the system.
Yeah, you're not fighting, and who wants to do that anyway? You've got plenty of stuff fighting with our clever clogs. Edgar Wilde and Julie, I don't know if that's your name, Edgar Wilde and Julie set up a company too. She's not out of the system either. Edgar Wilde, I don't know what this is about. Something up there that was sent to me. I'm not quite sure what that's about. This comment came before the last one. Thanks, Julia. Have you got?
I've got one. Yeah, I've got one. So has anyone? It's probably for the chat actually, but it's great to bring onto the show. Has anyone got anywhere with the DVLA and the right to travel?
That's a good one.
I personally don't think it's possible under this current system until we have revolution to declare yourself as a traveller operating in the private. Okay, I think the way I look at it is that again, it comes down to the living versus the dead entity, right? And of course they treat you as the dead entity, as the driver. Now you could say, oh, but the laws of the land give me the right to travel unmolested. Yeah. However, it doesn't give you the right to trespass. Okay. And that's where the argument kind of falls flat a bit. Is the road network is owned by the land that it's on, etc., is owned by the crown. Okay,
Is it not the public? Is it not the public? That's a legalese word, but is it not men and women's the roads?
No. It's owned by the crown. Well, I mean, under natural law, it's owned by nobody. But we don't live under natural law. We live under,
But isn't that the point of people being in the private to be living under natural law? To say, hang on a second, you came second, you legalese, legal law.
Okay,
we came first.
Who are you telling it to, though? You're telling it to dead entities. Again, you're declaring yourself as a dead entity automatically by communicating with them, right? Now, you're not allowed to trespass. You don't have any rights to trespass. So therefore, and being that all of the land is owned by somebody, and it's likely not you, okay?
God.
Whether it's fields owned by farmers or the road network owned
public
by
footpaths.
Public rights of way they have, right? Which allow you to walk through a particular area, right?
But it
doesn't allow you to operate a vehicle. These are designated, and as I say, the land, right, is all been snapped up a long time ago. So somebody owns it.
But when you say snapped up, I mean that's the thing that it always comes back to me. You hear about like the Normans came in and then claimed the land, and the king said, "I'll have it and I'll dish it out to these people." Before that, the Saxons. Before that, you had the Iron Age, the Stone, and all of these people. I mean, ultimately, nobody actually owns it, can't own it, can't take it with them when they die. Who nobody gives them the power to own that. And unless you challenge that, surely, if you just keep going, oh no, it's fine, yeah, you've got the bigger clubs, you're the ones who's going to lock me up and take my car away with all your paperwork and all of this. And if we continue just to acquiesce all the time to the system, then surely this revolution that you talk about is never going to happen.
Well, the revolution will happen when people have got enough knowledge to beat the claims against them. When
if they're not trying it, they're not going to do it. I mean, where I have a problem is that on the one hand, you're saying there's no point trying this because you won't win, even if you've got the knowledge. So you've got millions of people now who've got the knowledge, but they're not trying it because they keep thinking, oh, well, we won't win, will we?
No.
Can I butt in here? Sorry to interrupt, David. It's just that I have to go, and I've got a couple of important points. Apologies to Suk, because I know Suk had his hand up, but I have to go. The Crown own the land just as much as the Pope owns our soul. It's delusion.
Yes.
It's delusion.
Yeah.
But because they run the system and people have gullibly fallen for these delusions, then there's a grain of truth in what Davey is saying.
Yeah.
But we have anecdotes coming through that if you do the English Counties Assembly paperwork and put on your own plates, and they respect the fact that you've expatriated both yourself and your car, they leave you alone. People are driving, parking on double yellow lines, no problem. Driving at their own speed, no problem. Traveling with their own plates, no problem. And there's several people have been doing that for several months. It's looking very interesting. So it's not, I'm not saying that Dave is wrong. I'm just saying that circumstances, the goalposts are shifting literally as we speak. And we all have to be open-minded that the new realities are already starting to come in. And the old reality, which is that, yes, the Pope owns your soul and the Crown owns the land you walk on, will no longer be a reality, or will not be a reality for much longer.
To that example, guys, I actually put my own plates on my own vehicle for a couple of years. And the province came in and they said now they changed the law. They said you have to have state-issued plates. Now, the one thing you can claim is because you pay part of your gasoline or petrol when you put it in your vehicle, diesel fuel, same thing. you're paying for maintenance of the road, so why don't you have the right to use it?
Well,
Right?
that's a good point. Sook's got his hand up. Sook, sorry, Sook.
Yeah, no, it's fine, sir. I mean, I drove the car around for about 12 months without um, using it. I'm using it in the private. If you've got enough money to be able to put in a bank account and say that that's your insurance bond, then you can drive around in the private. You can remove the car from DVLA. You can do your own MOT checks. You can get out the road tax. I did all of that. But the big sticking point that they had over the 5 or 6 times that they stopped me was that they weren't able to validate roadside the insurance that I put in place, which was self-insurance. So you can do these things, but it comes down to what is it you're trying to achieve. Right? I'm not someone. I agree with you. People have to push. Once you've got the knowledge, you push.
Yes.
You challenge it. Right. At the end of the day, you take down the monolith. Everyone attacking it in a different way, and there are different ways to attack it. Let's be absolutely clear here. The roads, the infrastructure, all of that, it belongs to the people. The crown is the first amongst peers. That's what's written in English law. Okay, and it's the English law that deals with the land and the living people. The legal system deals with, exactly as they said, den entities, which are corporations. And these are two completely different setups. And we've been through this before. If people want to understand that, look at episode 1 when I went through it. I won't bore people by going through it again. But if you don't understand the way that it's set up, then it becomes really difficult, because there are situations in which you have got corporations and corporations talking to each other, or contracting with each other, and they don't have inalienable rights because they're not living, and they shouldn't have inalienable rights. The example I use is that if AstraZeneca and Moderna were to have a legal battle, an argument over who owns the patent to a vaccine, that is a legal case, because it's two non-living entities arguing over something, and you have expert witnesses and a judge, and that's a legal case. Now then, the legal case over whether an individual has to take that vaccine or not is a lawful case, because it involves a living soul and their inalienable rights. Whatever the outcome is of the case between Moderna and AstraZeneca, even if it comes out that it's the perfect vaccine and it gives you immortality and you never fall ill, my decision to take it or not has nothing to do with the outcome of that legal case, because this is now about my inalienable rights, and those that can only be governed by the law. Okay, and it's not difficult. It's very simple. Law for the living, legal for the non-living, the corporations, the institutes. The two shall never meet, because oil and water can't mix. But if the living want to contract with the non-living, they use the birth certificate as their profile or their avatar or their, whatever you want to call it, their passport into the corporate world. Just like if you move into the digital realm from the paper realm, you need to have a computer, which is the equivalent of your paper and pen. Then you need to have a Facebook profile, which is kind of like the equivalent to your birth certificate, if you want, to the Facebook world. Then you can go on Facebook Marketplace and others. These are just systems. They are agnostic systems. The systems themselves cannot be evil. The evil aspect comes in when the powers that be are forcing living souls to be processed through non-living processes like a commodity. And where people are suffering from psychosis, they don't know who their father is, they don't know who the creator is, and so they are falling into this trap of the deception and the fraud. Right? A bit like a scammer on the internet. Right? He's come on, he's giving you some false profile, you've fallen for it, and you've started giving them money and stuff. It's no different to that. It's just one's on paper and one's in digital, and that's it. So, this is about choice, how people choose to fight these things. It comes down to how you want to do it. There's nothing else to it. The roads, the infrastructure in this island, this nation, it belongs to the people. That's not something you need a revolution to understand. It's not something you need a revolution to live by as an individual. You just need a revolution to make that common knowledge and the norm for everyone to be able to live their lives freely. The
And
English
people,
law states that this country, the nation, belongs to the people, and that the crown is simply there to ensure that the legislature doesn't infringe on your inalienable rights. If they haven't done that, then they have gone rogue, and you are completely, in fact, you are duty bound by Article 61 of the Magna Carta to stand up against that and lawfully protest and obfuscate the crown until the rule of law is restored. That's the lawful realm. Then if you want to do it legally, you can go into their courts. But they could send you 1,000 different tickets. Are you going to sit there writing 1,000 love letters back to them? Is that your freedom? Is that how you choose to express it? Fuck,
No.
excuse my French, but fuck that. I'm not here to write 1,000 love letters back to them.
right.
None of the great messiahs wrote love letters to the Roman Empire or the Mughal Empire every time they wrote one. They lived their lives the way that they knew it needed living under the creator, and then they got on with it. And when those tried to stop them, then they dealt with it. But they didn't keep dealing with every little time the dog barked, they kept jumping up and down. They didn't do it. And that's not the way that everyone wants to do it. Some will be more comfortable doing it that way. That's fine. But there are others who want to battle it more directly, and actually both aspects are required in order to get to the end result. There isn't one way to do this. The only people that are wrong that think there's only one way, because when everyone attacks this, the whole thing collapses because they haven't got the flexibility to be able to fight back when you attack it in that way.
Well, I think that's a very good point, actually, that, you know, and this is what shows like this and all these other videos, is that individual men and women are attacking the system. And you can see that like the councils are putting up these notices saying the law of the land is not part of the freedom movement, is not part of this, that, and the other. And you know that means they're being taxed and flooded by it because they're constantly being hammered. And the more people that do that, then surely that is a way that achieves both, that brings the system down and is a revolution in and of itself.
However, the love letters. So, are you saying when you get a love letter from the council, you ignore it? Should we not respond to everything so that we're on top of it?
Look, part of your sovereign journey is that you choose the path that suits you, right? That you have to choose your battle depending on what your estate is and what your objectives and outcomes are. I sent a few letters to them 4 or 5 years ago when I set my stall out as to what I was going to do, and I haven't responded to anything since. Then I'm living a very different type of lifestyle, and those of you who know what I'm doing, it's not for everyone. And so you have to choose which battles you are or are not going to fight as you go along, right? But remember this, if everyone doesn't do anything, you'll end up where the Palestinians are, where those people in Donbass are. That's where you'll end up if you keep appeasing the beast. At some point, people have to bite the bullet and get on with it and start drawing. Otherwise, if you keep kicking the road down the can, when it explodes, it will be massive.
And it's probably worth getting your house in order before you guys have said this before, like before you take on whatever battle you want to take on, put your stuff in trust, protect your assets so they can't come knocking on the door, put your car into a company name or whatever, all these things that I've been picking up being on these shows and reading the stuff, rather than just going for it. Protect yourself first of all.
Well, this is where I sort of come from, my point of view, and I believe it's I agree. I think it was something Sue said earlier. There isn't one correct way of doing this, okay, of bringing down the system, okay. It needs to be a multi-pronged attack. So we've got the common law argument, the natural law argument, the admiralty law sort of argument. As far as the way I see it, there are approximately 70 million people in this country, and I would argue that it's less than 0.1% of that population are using like these remedies, or have woken up and using these remedies. Lots of people have woken up, but not everyone is using these remedies because they don't know how, or they don't have confidence in it, or they're struggling with the fear factor. it's a very small minority, and it's not the biggest, it's not the bigger picture. So the reason why I am trying to teach people how to deal with the same way as the very wealthy in society get away with certain things. I mean, Sue mentioned about the alternative to car insurance, and he's absolutely correct. Basically a bond certificate you create for £500,000, £500,000. However, of course, this is done by the very wealthy because they have assets that will guarantee that, you see. So therefore, they never have to get car insurance. All they need to do is issue a bond certificate to um, the government, to HMRC, and that's kind of held as, if there's any claims, it can be claimed from that pool of money. If there's no claims, then you can get that money back again. Yeah. um well, it's not money really. It's a promissory note, essentially, bond certificate. But you haven't had to actually pay anything like dividends, monthly insurance premiums, or yearly insurance premiums. So there are remedies. There's many remedies that the very, very wealthy in society use that you too can use. Yeah, it's just that you're not taught them. And I would suggest that most people out of that 70 million people don't want to give up their house, or risk their house, or even risk losing their Netflix account. Let's face it, this is how, you know, fickle some people are. Um, they don't want to lose their creature. They want to live the lifestyle they've become accustomed to, but with success rather than with constant claims being made against them and people coming banging on their door and threatening to steal their property. um, so we need to first, I think, work on teaching people the remedies, like the masses rather than the fringe groups, of people who are already awake. Therefore, we're just preaching to the converted. We obviously need to preach to the converted in respect of teaching them the right methods to use. But we also need to, if we want to bring forward a revolution, we need to educate people as to the things that they can do that won't negatively affect their state of living. Yeah, and that they've always been accustomed to. Because, as I say, they don't want fundamental change; they just want change. And most of them don't even know what change they want, because they don't want to wake up one morning and things are so fundamentally different that it throws their tiny little minds into huge confusion. They don't know what to do, and they panic and they suffer anxiety, and etc. etc. Am I going to lose my home? Am I allowed to drive my car? Am I going to lose everything? Am I going to starve to death? So we need to teach them all of these different methods. And I say to people, although I don't preach common law, people need to learn common law, because those laws are written, they are laws. Yeah.
Right.
However, common law is admiralty law. The Magna Carta was a signed contract, and if it's a signed contract, it's covered under contract law, which is the laws of commerce. So learn all of these laws, and rather than saying, completely dismissing your straw man, I say protect your straw man. A bit like David Edelman said, although I disagree with the analogy of the sinking ship and the lifeboats, because as we know, lifeboats are only provided to the most important people on the ship, and the rest are left to drown. So if you can get on a lifeboat, then very best of luck to you. But at some point, you're going to still end up in that jurisdiction. When you reach dry land, you're going to end up in that dry land's jurisdiction. So learn all these remedies, but don't dismiss your straw man, because you need your straw man in order to be able to give you the ability to fight. Yeah, it's a bit like Neo, the main character in the Matrix. If he didn't have the connectors on the back of his head and his back, he couldn't have uploaded to the Matrix, and therefore he couldn't have been a straw man in that Matrix and able to fight them. You know,
Right.
so
Okay. Got a question in there. You mentioned about a bond, and somebody's asked, how do you create a bond? Can anybody do that?
well, a bond is created by a trustee. Okay, so you need to accept your position of the trustee of your birth trust. However, the so this bond certificate, although we can all create one, if we don't have the assets or the banknotes in our bank accounts to back them up, then they're just going to be rejected. They shouldn't be rejected, but the reality is they are going to be rejected.
And
Um,
who's rejecting them?
well, it'll be the representatives of the Crown, HMRC, for example, the government.
Right.
The government don't work for the people. None of them work for the people. They all work for the Crown. If you ask a police officer, if you say to a police officer, "You
Oh
work
yeah.
for me," he'll tell you, "No, I don't. I work for the Crown." He takes his oath to the Crown.
Yes.
His oath to the Crown um, it includes the protecting the people. It used to say the subjects of the Crown, but now obviously that changed about 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and it now states it as the people.
And
Um,
just on that, if I can just interrupt
yeah,
before we move on, there is at the moment, or has been since the coronation, dubious ideas whether the Queen ever was the Queen, and indeed the King has any standing as the King. What's your thought on that, Davey?
well, my thought on that is it doesn't really matter, does it? It doesn't really matter. What matters is the people that serve them believe that they are the king and the queen. And those are the people that you're going to have to deal with, such as the courts, the police, the
Right.
army, the military. Okay, so you can say to them all you want, you could show them actual proof, and they will look at you like, showing somebody. It's the same as showing somebody who believes that 19 Middle Eastern men brought down the Twin Towers,
Hmm.
overtook the planes and brought down the Twin Towers. You're not going to be able to convince them with any evidence, okay?
Right.
And it's the same for the Crown. Sorry, the foot soldiers of the Crown. At the end of the day, those are the gatekeepers that we, on our level, have to deal with. We don't get to speak to the king or the queen or and question their authority and whether they have a right to the throne or anything like that. The courts work for the crown. If you have a solicitor or barrister, they work for the crown first and foremost. Your elected uh, members of parliament and councillors, they work for the crown. They take their oath to the crown. They don't take it to the constituents, to the people. So they all work for the crown. So yes,
Yeah,
you
we
can
saw
question
the MPs doing that, didn't we? We saw the
exactly,
MPs taking their
exactly.
oath to the Crown, which is of course a corporation. So
Yeah.
that's it's not even to the people.
It is a
Uh,
corporation, but this is where you can actually beat them. You see, Peace Officers UK just a few days ago became a community interest company. Okay, we registered as a community interest company. And the reason being is not because we love that system, because we love the matrix. The reason being is because we intend to act as agents on behalf of the people who haven't got the knowledge, okay, who say, I've got, bailiffs at my door or enforcement agents at my door, and, what do I do? How do I deal with
yeah,
it? So that's when we will turn up and represent them, get them to sign a document. And this is something I wanted to say about actually Julia's situation that happened not too long back, where you found Richard, you were asking questions of the police and
yes.
the bailiffs, etc., and they essentially just wanted to blank you and refuse to speak to you. There's a little tip for you, okay?
Oh,
Um, if you create a document right? Call it. I created one. I called it the Declaration of Consent. You can, if you want, you can use that one. Download it from the peaceofficers.uk website. In the shop, it's free to download, even though it's a shop. It's free to download. Declaration of Consent, and what it is, it's a statement that so in your case, you would have got Julia to sign it, to put her name on it, to appoint you as her agent, and then sign and date it. Okay, then they are forced to speak to you. Okay,
Oh, I
they
see.
have no choice, and it's little things like that where you beat them in their system. Okay,
Right.
it's little tiny tricks. It's such a simple thing. It's just a simple paragraph, a simple statement that basically gives you power of attorney to act as an agent on, say, Julia's behalf. In which means that they can't say, no, we don't need to, we're not going to talk to you. We're here to talk to her. Or
Right.
do you know what I mean? They are
Yeah.
forced to, and the courts will back that up. Okay.
Wow.
But up
Okay.
until that point, if you don't do that, you're just a
Yes.
Interfering old git.
bystander.
Yeah.
So it's
Brilliant.
just knowing little things like that can actually buy you an awful lot of power in that
Brilliant.
situation.
Thank you so much. That's a really good tip.
Good tip,
Actually,
good
that's
tip.
good.
Question?
Yes.
We got a couple. Here's a quickie. So it says, when you say control strawman, do you mean secured party process?
When
I
I
don't know
say,
who said that.
I don't know. When I say straw man, I'm talking about your
legal
identity.
entity?
Yeah, but
your
so does
legal
anybody know what a secured party process is?
There
No
is a
idea.
thing called what the hell did you call it?
Secured party
Secured party
process.
Yeah, I'll just change process to creditor. And what some people do is they put a lien against the uppercase name through UCC 1 to UCC 3. And they put a lien against that uppercase name. That's the U.S. law. You can do it through the U.S. In Canada, we would use the PPSA. You guys have something similar in the U.K. And the idea is that, okay, if I want to just pick on Karen, for example, and I want to sue her for something, I'm not suing her directly. I'm suing the uppercase name, because all our court cases are an uppercase name. Now, if you turn around as the meat suit, as I call it, or the human being, already have a claim in place, the theory is that if I come second, well, it doesn't matter. You have first dibs, right? We're at an all you can eat buffet table, and you're the first one to the table. Well, you
And you
take
eat it
whatever
all.
you want, right? And then I come along. Well, I only get with the leftovers. Now, if there's enough there, and you claim it all, I don't get to eat anything. This is the way this lien process works. And so what people are doing is they're putting a claim in through UCC 1 to UCC 3 or a PPSA.
Against themselves.
In essence, they're leaning it against the straw man, which is
Yeah.
the uppercase name. So yeah,
Yeah.
technically it's against themselves.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
That's
Clever,
cool.
clever clogs.
I've got a quick question
Go
here
on
to shove in. I can't read what your name is. It's starts with X and then goes into.
Hopalopadoodle.
Yes, that's a very lovely name though. It's on the tip of my tongue. Question: we've mentioned a lot about dead people. So dead people get post going through the letterbox for years after. Isn't silence, i.e., no response, just saying that I'm dead? So in other words, I can see what he's saying, that
yeah.
once you are deceased, like my dad is now dead, and if he still had the house, I would get letters, or if I had arranged the post office, I'd still get letters from various, some probably charities that saying, please would you give some money to us, please, because we've only got 452,000 million pounds, trillion, billion, Vince Hillian makes you William amounts of money. Please give us more. And he doesn't reply, obviously, because he'll shudder up there and go, Richard, don't you bloody dare give to that donkey that place, whatever it is,
I like donkeys.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with donkeys, and I didn't mean to slip out like that. There's every reason that you should be protecting donkeys, but whatever the thing is, he doesn't reply, and so I think the question is saying, but if you didn't reply, and you're not dead, is that not saying, well, I'm dead anyway because you've written to a dead entity?
Great question.
Right. So silence
It's
is
golden.
not silence is not acquiescence. unless it is clearly stated that your silence will be classed as acquiescence. Okay, so it's not automatic that if you don't respond, if you get a summons from the court, it clearly tells you that if you do not respond, then it may be heard in your absence. So then your silence is acquiescence. Okay, but it's not
Right.
automatic. Okay, it has to be specified, and this is where you can. My good friend Jolando actually.
It's a great name, isn't
Yeah,
it?
Jolando.
Jolando.
Jolando want to dance.
Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun.
It is entertainment as well.
Jolando,
The show.
he was he's in dispute at the moment regarding his property and the fact that he issued a promissory note. They are claiming they've destroyed the promissory note, and of course, his argument now, as I said to him, if they can only destroy that which they own themselves, otherwise it's criminal damage. So you've caught them in a trap, essentially. They're claiming that it's, we don't own it, etc., etc. Now he's been trying to get a response from their solicitors, which I think is TLT, is it, in Bristol? The massive ones that keep going after people's properties and whatever. And he wasn't getting a response from their solicitor, so he wrote another email and explicitly said that if he does not hear anything, I think it was like by the end of the day, within 24 hours or whatever the time scale it was, then he will assume that they agree to, his terms.
Yeah.
So therefore, he's explicitly saying your silence is going to be treated as acquiescence. Now,
Yes.
within minutes, he had a response. Okay.
Right.
As soon as he put that on there, he had a response. Right. Now, the response was only to acknowledge that they'd received it and they will contact their client and they will get him the response. But it was a response all the same, because they knew that when it's explicitly laid out that your silence is acquiescence, you don't have to use those exact words. As I say, the courts will say if you do not appear or you do not respond, then it will be heard in your absence. If they didn't say that, they wouldn't be able to hear it in your absence.
Right. So you could send a letter. I've done this and said, whatever it is, and I said if I don't hear with you within 14 days, then you've tacitly agreed that what is contained in here, unless you rebut it, it will become true.
Absolutely, 100%.
Right.
And you've given them that legal ability to to respond, because if you say, it depends also what sort of time scale you're talking about, because if you say to them, I'll give you 20 minutes to respond, then a court would deem that unreasonable.
Yes.
Usually it's 7 days, 14 days or 30 days. In a lot of cases, especially with legal documentation, it's 30 days for them to respond. And as you say, if you put in your letter, if I don't hear from you within 14 days, then I will, the matter will be closed, or words to that effect.
Yes.
That's when the silence is acquiescence comes into it, and where you can use that. And, because then they would have to explain to the court why they didn't respond, why they didn't attempt to rebut it in that reasonable amount of time.
Right. So, but if you get a letter, I suppose it's very unlikely that you'll get, say, a ULEZ thing or a Clean Air Zone bill in the post that doesn't say you need to respond by. I imagine that lawyers have set these things up so that is exactly as you say. You've got to respond to it, or you're liable. But if for chance, somebody does say, "Oh, you parked in front of my drive, I'm suing you," and you just say, "Oh, well, it doesn't say I need to respond, so I don't."
Well, yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, that I'm not sure really that sort of analogy really applies, because we're talking about silence is acquiescence, So in other words, if they sent you a letter and said, and didn't say, I expect a response within this time, or the matter is closed, right? They just sent you a letter. Well, first of all, they've got to prove that the letter was delivered. And this is where you can get out of speeding offences, because they don't use um, the
they're not registered or anything like that.
well,
Sign and serve.
they don't use a signed for service. They just send it in the post, and what they
Right.
rely on is you confirming somehow that you've received it. Doesn't matter if you've read it or
Yes.
opened it. It's considered served if it can be proved to be delivered. Just like a promissory note becomes a negotiable instrument upon its creation, endorsement, and then delivery. Once you've proven delivery, and you've completed all three elements, then it becomes a live, for want of a better word, negotiable instrument, and worth its face value. Up until
Yes.
that point, it's just paper and ink, you know.
Yes.
But yeah, silence is acquiescence, as I say, if you specifically state that lack of response will, if you do not respond, this will happen. Then, then that is taken as silence is acquiescence.
And on that note, Davey, we had a question at the beginning saying, can Davey explain how you can effectively use a promissory note to settle an electricity bill? Which also actually coincides with somebody asking me to ask you, Richard, about that little thing you did on that bank gyro credit last week. And somebody here has just said, have you heard from the water company?
Yes. Over to, well, let's do PC Davey first.
Yes, PC
Peace
Davey.
officer. I
Peace,
beg your
yes,
pardon.
peace.
Yeah.
Peace.
Right. So, remind me again quickly what the question was.
The question was, how can you
Oh,
use the
electricity.
promissory note for electricity? Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you can use a promissory note for any already established debt. Okay. If there is a liability outstanding, then as trustee of your birth trust, self-appointed, um, you are entitled to issue a promissory note. That is to be treated as cash in law, which means once you've completed those three elements, which is, as I say, creation, endorsement, so your signature, and delivery, right? It then becomes a negotiable instrument. It can then be used to settle any outstanding liability. Now, the problem you're going to have is whoever you're sending it to, whether it's water, gas, council tax, whoever,
Octopus.
mortgage loan, they're all going to say no. They're all going to say, we don't accept that. Okay. What you have to do is fight through that by ignoring what they're saying. Doesn't matter what they say, they will tell you all kinds of stuff. Okay. What you need to do is get it to a court. Okay. And likely you will need to get it to a higher court eventually. So in other words, if once you take it to a lower court, it's a high likelihood the deputy district judge or the district judge won't have much knowledge about promissory notes. Whereas high court judges, obviously, because these things are quite often fought in the high courts, will have more knowledge of promissory notes. And after all, that's where the case law is set in legal precedence is set in the high courts rather than the lower courts. So you're always going to, never expect to fill out a promissory note, send it off to your energy supplier, and for them to go, oh, lovely, great, that's brilliant, thanks very much, that's awesome, all settled, done and dusted. You might have situations where, due to clerical errors, that does happen. Crazier things have happened before. I had a situation where I passed my driving test back in 1998, but I never sent off the little slip. Okay, I've still got it to this day in my wallet, a bit deteriorated, but still. Never sent it off. Now it's clearly stated on there that you've got 2 years to claim your license, or you have to do the test again. Well, of course, I never did, because at the time I split up with my ex-wife. I moved out, and I never got round to it. Procrastinated, etc., etc. So I drove around for many, many, many years, a couple of decades, thinking I had no license. And then I applied in 2020, I decided, no, I'm going to go and I'm going to get my license, apply for it, do the test and everything. So I applied for a provisional license, and they sent me a full driving license because I'd passed my test back in 1998, yet never claimed the liability. So I suspected that's what was going to happen when it took about 6 weeks, because normally you get a license within a couple of weeks. It took 6 weeks, and then I got a letter asking me, certain information. Where did you pass your driving test, and et cetera, et cetera. So I gave them all those details. As I say, I had the slip in my wallet, which I've still got, and it's in, bold red lighting that clearly states you've only got 2 years. So, but as I say, they sent me the driving license anyway. The full drive.
Well, that's
the knackered.
Oh, still got it.
They've
bit
got
of
it. Look at
paper.
that.
Where in red writing, I don't know if you can see, there's a red bold writing
Oh,
there.
yeah.
That clearly states that, I'll read it. It says, you have 2 years from this day to claim full entitlement.
And yet you got it
if you
anyway.
fail to do so, you will have to take both tests again. But they said I've got a full driving
anyway. I had a girlfriend who had the same thing happen to her. She passed her test first time, but didn't send the thing off because she was a bit scatty. And then she got a job with a radio station as a rep and had to drive around. And she was doing this for about 10 years. Luckily, never got a ticket or anything. God knows how she got insurance or all those sort of things. Yeah, it was on the company. And then they came in with some policy where they were changing the cars or whatever, and everybody, for some reason or other, had to provide their driving license. And they had a few weeks or 10 weeks or whatever to do this as this. I think the company was bought out by another company. Doesn't matter. Anyway, she suddenly realised she'd never sent this thing off, and she didn't have a thing. But she then did her driving. She took lessons, and she was so worried that other people, other of her reps from this radio station driving around would see her taking lessons with L plates. Anyway, she did the test, so they never sent it to her by default, and she passed it. And
Thank God.
But she said, as far as I know, I'm the only person who's taken the test twice and passed first time on both, which is quite extraordinary. There was another thing. Oh, yeah. So
the water thing.
The water thing.
But can I just say, because the question, because
we're running out of time. So
with regard to this promissory note, so you go to the High Court, and then what? Then you fight your case.
You fight your case and prove that you've settled the liability. So you have settled it. If you issue a promissory note against, let's say, a mortgage, right? You've settled the mortgage by creating a new unsecured liability in the form of a promissory note. And the mortgage agreement is also a promissory note, so they can't deny in court that they don't accept promissory notes. First of all, it'll probably be listed in their articles of association upon their incorporation. So you can check Companies House website to see if they've got it mentioned, because a lot of lenders especially will have all the payment methods that they accept, and promissory notes, bills of exchange, will be listed within that articles of association. But what you're doing is you're saying, well, I've settled that, with my signature. And they say, well, you can't. You go, well, why can't I? Because I created a promissory note in the first place, which I then gifted to you as a mortgage note, and then you lent it back to me, and then got me to agree to pay it back to you, right? So I'm entitled under the financial laws to settle early, albeit if I settle within a certain amount of time, say the first 12 months or the first 5 years, then I will have an early settlement fee to add to the full amount. So you add all fees, everything, and then you issue the promissory note. That's full and final settlement. They can add that immediately to their accounts, okay? The same way they did with your mortgage note or your loan agreement, whatever, your loan note. they added. So if you've got a mortgage for £200,000, the moment you signed it and handed it over to them, they immediately added £200,000 to their accounting, and held the note as a security for that amount. Now that then gives them the ability under fractional reserve banking to lend up to 9 times the face value of that note. So this is why companies all over the world will buy promissory notes from lenders, etc., because they're valuable assets when it comes to lending other money. They act as a security certificate to allow them to create out of thin air another 9 times the face value of that note. So it then becomes in court, you argue in your case that you've settled with a promissory note. Lord Denning, the former Master of Rolls, Lord Denning stated that it is to be treated as cash. He also stated that we have repeatedly said in this court, therefore, repeatedly, it has been upheld in the High Court that it is an instrument of cash. So you maintain that you've settled it in cash.
So do you think then they won't want to take it to court because they can see where it's going to go in the end? They won't want it to be revealed because ultimately you'll be pulling out a £10 note, won't you, and saying, well, if that promissory note is worth nothing, then this one and everybody up in the country who's ever got a £10 note, a £2 note, there's no such thing, whatever, they're also worth nothing, and nobody would want that case in court, would they?
Well, this is it. This is the difficulty they have, you see, is with the courts is on the one hand, they don't want to open the floodgates, right? So they're it's a very difficult one for them, which is why it doesn't set legal precedents in the lower court. So what the banks will do, or the lenders will do, is they will take you to the lower courts, the county court, and get an order against you that way.
And if it's, I mean, that you made out, on the mortgage one, but if it's only for 50 quid or 100 quid, where it's not a lot of money, do you think they're more likely to accept that rather than have to be dragged to court for 100 quid?
Well, if you're talking about the total amount owed is only like 50 to 100 quid, I mean, I wouldn't even bother paying that with a promissory note personally.
Depends how hard up you are, surely.
Yeah, but I recommend to people that what they should do is anything that is a secured debt, okay, such as a mortgage, it's secured on the property. Then what you should do is you should settle with a promissory note, but don't cancel your direct debit, okay? And there's a very good reason why. Don't cancel your direct debit. Allow them to take the next payment after you've issued the promissory note, and then what you do is you ask for that back, because you say, excuse me, you weren't entitled to take that. Can I have it back, please? And they'll say, well, it's a mortgage payment. No, of course we can take it. You say, no, the mortgage has been settled with the promissory note. The terms of the promissory note, the promissory note that I created, again, you can download it on peaceofficers.uk. If you go to the shop, download it for free, the template. It's a payment preference, promissory note, payment scheduled, sorry, not preference, payment scheduled promissory note. So what you're doing is you're saying this promissory note is worth its full face value, let's say £100,000. That's what I owe left on my mortgage. I'm going to issue you with £100,000 cash note. Okay, it's secured by my signature. Yeah, and they say, well, we don't accept that because it can't be secured by your signature. You say, well, you were happy to accept my signature on your mortgage note. How can you, which is a promissory note? How can you not? And I'm entitled to settle early, and I'm entitled to settle in cash. And Lord Denning, Master of Rolls, stated
and then you get back,
it is cash.
Absolutely.
So it's about fighting them, but don't cancel your direct debit. Let them take it, so you become the claimant in the court, and they become the respondent.
Oh,
and
I
it
see.
changes
That's
the
where
dynamic.
I've cocked it up then.
Oh.
But we don't have time now to go through what I've done. We'll have to do that
Another time, yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it's 8 o'clock now, and traditionally we slam the hammer down, and the courtroom is shut up for shop, and all our clever clogs are taken back down to their cells, and they don't see the light of day until we do the next show, which unfortunately is going to be a bit of a break between now and then. But you're going up to Scotland.
Oh, kind of new, Jimmy.
Aye.
Yeah, we are. We're going to Perth.
To where?
Perth. How do you say that in a Scottish accent?
Perth.
No, in a Scottish accent.
I'm
Perth.
not even going to try.
Quite new. We are going to Perth on the 22nd of September. It looks like a good show. A bunch of us going. So it's going to be at the Royal George Hotel in Perth from about 10 o'clock till 5. And we have Chris Coverdale, Sovereign Pete, the People's Lawyer, Tony Rose, Pete Wilson. I'll be there, and Jill Lindsay will be there, and also Carl Deans, who is a student of Sovereign Pete. So there's going to be a whole bunch of us. You're not going to be there, sadly.
No, unfortunately, we would have been there a little bit earlier to see Barbara O'Neill, and I should be interviewing her. But
You
that's
shall indeed,
completely
because there's a
different-
conference, actually, isn't there, in Scotland?
Yeah.
Is it part of that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, if you want to come to this gig in Scotland, somebody has contacted me. They're going to arrange a bus, which is great, from Glasgow to Perth. And I think we can do the same from Edinburgh. If there's people from Edinburgh or Glasgow that want to get to Perth, I think it's an hour, then let me know. Kizzy63@pm.me, KIZZI63@pm, protonmail.me. Ping me an email and I can connect you with a guy that's going to do the bus thing, and you can get the tickets from me. And I think we might have quite a lot of people coming, so buy your tickets in advance for this. It's 20 quid in advance, 25 on the door, if there will be any left on the door. So that's
And you're
that.
throwing in an ice cream and a cuddly toy, is that right?
No, just a television.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, television with mainstream horror on it.
Mainstream horror.
So big thanks to our clever clogs, to the wonderful good old PC Davey. Thank you so much for coming. P.O. Davey. The wonderful Stan McDonald. Hello, Stan. Or goodbye, Stan.
Goodbye, Richard. It's a pleasure to be here.
Nice to see you. And, of course, lovely, wonderful Sook, who
He's gone to dinner.
is gone for dinner. Julia's been working in the background. Thanks to David Edelman, who was there earlier, but he's had to go and do something.
Can I just give a very quick plug, to Hope
Yes,
Sussex?
of course, for your bath.
Oh, it's for his wedding.
Oh, it's for his
For
wedding.
so the Hope Sussex Freedom Music Festival at the end of this month, the August Bank Holiday weekend, down at Hope Sussex at Netherfield, East Sussex. Me and my beautiful partner Jess are getting married on the Sunday the 25th at 3 o'clock at the festival.
Fantastic.
And it's been the celebrant for it, who's officiated it, is my very good friend Michael Manuel Shaves, aka Mad Mix Conspiracies. So go to the website hopesussex.co.uk, because I believe there are still tickets available. So
fantastic. Oh, wonderful stuff. Congratulations for that in advance. And do give your barber my love. We share the same barber.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. He's a nice bloke.
Is he Turkish?
No, he's not actually. He's licorice. Anyway.
Turkish delight,
Yeah,
licorice
it's
delight.
one of those. And so Sook's there. So cheerio, Sook.
See you. Thank you very much. Thanks everyone
So
for your time.
can you? But somebody wants to get hold of you. SUKH. Can you say? Are we allowed to get hold of you?
Yeah, people can get hold of me. I'm on the Rapid Response Telegram group or the Guardians 300 Telegram group, or you can look me up on Gab, Sovereign Mind on Gab, whatever you like, or I can put my phone number on the YouTube.
That's brave. But they can get you through Guardians 300 and Rapid Response, and it's SUKH.
So when you say get hold of you, get hold of Sook, but don't rough him up.
Don't rough him up. He's a
lovely bloke. Yeah. So there we go. Listen, we've run out of time. Big thanks to Julia for moderating in the chat room. Sorry if we didn't get to all your questions. We had some very deep stuff to get through. It just shows how important these kind of shows are.
Indeed.
But the summer is not here. Although occasionally we get the odd dollop of sunshine.
Yeah,
yes.
too hot.
But we'll be back probably in October.
Yeah, that's fine. Absolutely.
So
yeah.
watch out there. I'll let you know when it's all coming back. But in the meantime, thank you so much for supporting this. Do share it around to your friends and neighbours and your granny. And don't forget to like and subscribe and send piles of gold.
And silver.
And silver, if you say. Well, actually, silver's going up more, isn't it?
Is it? Well,
It'll
more
be-
silver than gold
send
then,
more
yeah.
silver, that would be good. So that's it. Thank you so much to everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure to host these. In the meantime, we must go away. So thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, everybody else. Toodle pip.
Toodle pip.